Midwest Industrial Products Corporation makes two products, Product H and Product L. Product H is expected to sell 50,000 units next year, and Product L is expected to sell 10,000 units. A unit of either product requires 0.2 direct labor hours. The company's total manufacturing overhead for the year is expected to be $1,920,000. Let's look at requirement number 1. The company currently applies manufacturing overhead to products using direct labor hours as the allocation base. If this method is followed, how much overhead cost would be applied to each product? We're going to need to compute the overhead cost per unit and the total overhead cost assigned to each product. First, let's begin by calculating our total direct labor hours. For Product H, we're told that we work 0.2 direct labor hours per unit, and we plan to produce 50,000 units. So we can expect to work 10,000 direct labor hours on Product H, and 2,000 direct labor hours on Product L, which is the 10,000 units times our 0.2 direct labor hours per unit. So our total direct labor hours for the coming year are 12,000 hours. To calculate our predetermined overhead rate, we'll take our total estimated manufacturing overhead cost of $1,920,000 and divide it by our estimated 12,000 direct labor hours, and we get a predetermined overhead rate of $160 per direct labor hour. To calculate the amount of overhead per unit, we need to take our predetermined overhead rate of $160 per direct labor hour and multiply it by the 0.2 hours we're expected to work on each unit of Product H and Product L. And we see our manufacturing overhead applied to each unit is $32. Let's next calculate the total manufacturing overhead cost that will apply to Product H and Product L. For Product H, we'll take our $32 per unit and multiply it by our 50,000 units and get a total estimated overhead cost assigned to Product H will be $1,600,000. The total estimated overhead cost assigned to Product L will be the $32 per unit times 10,000 units, or $320,000. As a final check, make sure that the total overhead that we've applied to each of our products, which is $1,920,000, agrees with our total estimated overhead of $1,920,000. In requirement 2, we're told that management is considering an activity-based costing system and would like to know what impact this change might have on product costs. For the purpose of discussion, it has been suggested that all manufacturing overhead be treated as a product-level cost. That is, the total manufacturing overhead cost would be divided in half between the two products, with $960,000 assigned to Product H and $960,000 assigned to Product L. Notice, again, we haven't changed the total manufacturing overhead that we're applying. We're simply changing the allocation between the two products. Let's go ahead and see how the change in our allocation method impacts the manufacturing overhead cost assigned to each unit. For Product H, we'll take our total manufacturing overhead of $960,000 and divide it by the 50,000 units we plan to produce, which gives us an overhead cost per unit of $19.20. For Product L, we'll take our $960,000 in estimated overhead, divide it by the 10,000 units, and get $96 in estimated overhead per unit. Requirement 3 asks us to explain the impact on unit product cost of the switch in our costing systems. Under our old method of allocating overhead, which was based on direct labor hours, Product H was allocated most of the overhead cost, and this was simply because Product H incurred most of the direct labor hours. In fact, we can see Product H incurred 5 times as many direct labor hours and was allocated 5 times as much of the manufacturing overhead cost. If, on the other hand, we split the overhead equally between the two products, we treated it as a product cost, we can see a shift in overhead costs, $1.6 million for the high volume product to 960. We've shifted overhead costs from our high volume product to our low volume product. In terms of which allocation method is most accurate, if most of our overhead costs are labor related and driven by direct labor hours, then we should probably allocate them on the basis of direct labor hours, and the allocation we did in part 1 is more accurate. On the other hand, if most of our overhead costs are product related, for instance, we have a lot of product design cost, we have a lot of parts administration type of cost, in that case, perhaps allocating the overhead evenly between products is a more accurate way of allocating the overhead, in which case we can see that the true cost of product L is much higher than our estimated overhead cost that we used in part 1 of $32 per unit.